The Season of Soul 10.6 update notes are up, so let's go through it. First off, the Fenrir skin is pretty dope if you ask me, but also the spicy ramen raw skin is awesome. I love that skin so much. That's so great. Cthulhu skin, that's pretty great. Good Cupid. That Uller skin is awesome, I have to say. Soul skin, King Arthur skin, Vulcan, Loki, Chernobog. It's a decent Chernobog skin, but I feel like he kind of already has one like that. All right, let's get into some of these notes. Bug fixes. One of the big things they're adding are soul surges. Basically, what the soul surges are is when a god dies, it spawns a soul surge at the place of where they died. Basically, while you're fighting in the soul surge, all players gain a 15% increased movement speed, and while below 50% health, all their basic attacks and abilities you hit on a god will apply burn that deals 2% of the current HP for every 0.5 for 2 seconds, 4 ticks total. Dying inside the surge reduces your respawn timer by 50%. This is applied to all modes except for Conquest. They nerfed the rewards on getting a shutdown, which is nice. I like that a lot. Ranked MMR is getting a soft reset. Couple changes to Assault. Conquest, they're updating the look of the map. They're adding in the beacon. What the beacon does, it spawns at the middle of the mid lane. It's a capture point for teams to try to get. There'll be 3 of them per match. To capture it, you just have to stand around it, and the more people you have with it, the faster you will take it. It grants a permanent 5% additional damage to structures and titans, and a 1% additional movement speed per stack. It also gives gold and XP. After the third beacon has been captured, the team that has captured the most, their Titan will basically start charging down lane that has the most tower health. The Titan will charge down that lane and it will face off with melee attacks and 2 new abilities. While the Titan is charging down lane, that defending team cannot end game until they have defeated that Titan. Defeating it will send it back to the fountain, and then you can win the game as normal. Fire Giant buff gets a little bit of a nerf. The Titan is getting decreased health and health scaling from structures. Towers and Phoenixes are getting nerfed. Pyromancer increased gold. Oracles increased gold and XP. Increases and decreases to a lot of different camps. Get into the items now. Relic Dagger is getting 2 new glyphs. First one being Bewitched Dagger. The passive is still being your relics receive 40% cooldown. Glyph, all enemies have 20% reduced attack speed in a 55 unit radius around you. I'm very happy about that. There hasn't been a good anti-attack speed item in the game for a while. The other one is Eldritch Dagger. The glyph is when you activate a relic, your protections are increased by 15% and you gain the ability to see wards for 10 seconds. It's not bad. I think it'll be outshined by its counterpart. The glyph for Runeforge Hammer is now Flameforge Hammer. The passive being your next successful hard CC on an enemy god creates a runic symbol on the ground that lasts 5 seconds. Enemies in the symbol take 10% damage. This can only occur once every 15 seconds. The glyph being enemy gods within the runes are burned, dealing 5 plus 10% of your protections from items and abilities as magical damage every 1 second while inside the rune, and for 3 seconds after leaving it. The other glyph, Rune Breaking Hammer, is your next successful hard CC on an enemy god creates a 30 unit shockwave around them. Enemies hit by the shockwave deal 10% less damage and take 10% more damage for 3 seconds. They only occur every 15 seconds. Pridwin got glyphs as well. Glorious Pridwin glyph. When your ultimate ability has finished casting, you create an explosion, dealing 75% of your protections from items and abilities as magical damage, slowing targets by 25% for 3 seconds in a 30 unit radius. Then you gain a shield equal to 90% of your protections from items and abilities for 5 seconds. When destroyed by timing out or being depleted, you explode again. This can occur once every 45 seconds. The Reverent glyph. When your ultimate ability has finished casting, you gain a shield equal to 200% of your protections from items and abilities for 5 seconds. When destroyed, by timing out or depleted, it explodes in 30 units and deals magical damage equal to 75% of your protections from items and abilities to slow targets by 25% for 3 seconds. Only occur 45 seconds. Alright, game-wide stat reductions. All tier 3 items are receiving a 30% power nerf. All health, physical, and magical protection items are being nerfed by 15%. Also nerfing any passive that provides power, health, or protections. The only unchanged items are Odysseus Bow and Toxic Blade. Let's get into the nerf items. I'm not going to say all of them because it's literally like every item in the game. Pretty much everything is getting either a health, protection, or power reduction. Going through it. Even if they had their passives are getting decreased too. If they had any protections or health or power. Going through all of it. Weren't kidding when they said all items. Not seeing anything other than just 4. Alright, nerf to starter items, upgrades. Pretty much the same thing, just protections, health, power. Those technically aren't tier 3 items. Nothing new, nothing unexpected there. The item shifts are items that they didn't think were performing well, so they're not getting nerfed as hard as some of the other items, or they're getting slight shifts. Nothing too crazy, just they're probably going to be better now. Got Absolution, Abyssal Stone, Amulet of the Silence, Archdruid's Fury, Cyclopean Ring, Dawnbringer, Frostbound Hammer, Gem of Isolation, Hasten Ring, Jotuns, both upgraded versions of it, Manicore Spikes, Guardian Mail, Stone of Gaia, Talisman of Energy, Telkine's Ring, and Ethereal Staff. Alright, these guys are receiving the same nerfs, but maybe some of their passives and thresholds are changing. For example, the upgrade of Bancrofts, they decrease the amount of power needed for each stack to get the passive. Same thing, similar to Heartseeker, Lono's Mask, Ronja's Mask, Ratasker items are getting nerfed. There's more item balances, decreased costs on Bluestone. Boomba's Dagger, the starter, actually got a buff on power and increased health regained from killing a jungle monster. Warflag increased health regained. Wing Shard, they decreased the movement speed. Race of Radiance decreased movement speed and duration. Similarly, on its upgrades, they reverted their penetration changes that they did in the last update. So if you don't know what those were, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter because they pretty much just undid what they did. Basically, pen is just better again. All right, let's get into the gods. Afro got a nerf on her Kiss with decreased movement speed. Hachiman got a nerf as well. I know everyone is super happy about that. Hell is receiving another nerf. I have no idea why. I think she's terrible right now, but that's just my opinion. Tyr decreased physical power in his changed stance. Amana receiving another nerf, which I don't know why. I haven't seen him played once since the last nerf, but alright. Yamoja decreased movement speed on a Riptide. Also don't ever see Yamoja. Buffed gods, we got Achilles, increased execute threshold from 30 to 35% of his HP. On her is getting increased base attack speed from 0.9 to 1. Shifting Sands, increased slow. Apollo, increased mesmeration duration. Increased movement speed buff / debuff on his dash. Artemis is increased physical power scaling, decreased cooldown. Bacchus decreased cooldown on his burp. Basset increased cat hit points from 2 to 3. That is going to be insane. Chiron increased duration of his CC immunity granted to self. I like that. Cleo decreased cooldowns and entering a wall. Decreased base damage taken while in the wall. Danzaburo increases stun duration on his ult. Discordia decreased cooldowns on Strife ability. Erlong Shen increased percent max HP damage from 1.75 to 2%. Also, his pin is getting an increased root duration. 9 turns blessing, increased damage mitigation buff from 25 to 35. Eset, finally she's getting a buff. Increased magical power scaling per hit. Fafnir increased the duration on his alt. Geb increased shield duration, increased base damage on his Cataclysm. Yi gets increased base damage on his Ricochet. E-Shells increased damage per tick. Janus has increased percent magical penetration on his alt. Kukulkan decreased cooldowns. Kuzenbo increased damage reflection, increased mitigation from 10 to 20%. That's a big buff on his passive. Non-conquest updates. Let's see, Lancelot's got an increased movement speed and basic attack reduction. Also got increased physical power scaling. I don't know why they didn't update him for Conquest too. He's pretty bad in Conquest. Loki increased duration on his debuff. Increased fury-based damage. Medusa increased attack speed from her Viper Shout, along with increased base damage from it as well. Mulan's getting a decreased cooldown on her Spear Thrust. Getting decreased cooldown on her Grapple. Poseidon, his Trident ability now provides attack speed. Ra, increased protections, physical power provided, and magical provided from his Solar Blessing. Rajan gets increased damage on his marked target. Ravana gets increased health shield gain from stacks. Decrease on his cooldowns. Set increased dash damage, decreased cooldowns. Shiva increased HP 5 and MP 5. Also decreased cooldown on his alt. Gotta gets increased physical power scaling on her alt on the first hit. Soybeck decreased cooldown, decreased cooldown, decreased cooldown. Sung Wukong increased HP threshold to trigger the buff from 50 to 60. Tsukiyomi's spikes increased the slow. Uller gets a buff to his alt, increases attack speed, and increased lifesteal for the axe stance. Vulcan gets a cooldown reduction on his cannon. Jing Ten increases the duration of his root. Zhonghui gets increased protections gained from his passive. And that is the end of the update. That is a lot of changes. It's really going to change the game a lot. And let me know what you guys think in the comments.